pros to ask them about, poor Protoss genuine details. Genuine details. Not genuine. What am I trying to think of? I guess specific details. Zerg and Terran, blah, blah, blah. Been trying to just get pros insight, basically. And Harstem has agreed to come on. He doesn't mind if we do it live. So instead of doing it off stream, we're gonna do it live. We're gonna fucking do it live. Walking and talking's hard, man. Gotta be a good Terran. Gotta be a good StarCraft player. Being good at Terran isn't so different from being good as at Zerg and Protoss. It's all about mechanics. Is that what the kids call Discord nowadays? Is DC? Mechanics just build tanks, but build them frequently. Hello.
All right, how do you want to do it?
Yeah, good question. Usually I'd have a couple of VODs prepared and all that good stuff, but since it's kind of more on the fly, we can just like go over like GSL or is there a decent amount of Protoss there? Any recently?
I have a lot of replays.
We can go over any of the replays.
I don't know what you want exactly. Like, do you want specific matchup or players or?
No, not necessarily. I'm probably going to ask you if you have any like insight into anyone who's playing in the season finals that you think might be interesting, but just genuinely want to hear you go over Protoss matchups in fine detail. So, you know, like one matchup, one lesson per matchup or something like that.
Okay, I'm just looking at the players. I hadn't done that yet. Clam Bunny Special Max Packs, Neep Hero Marine SOS Parting, Dark Time Scarlet Probe, Trap Zeros Down Us. I have a little bit on Zaun if you want.
Oh, sure. I mean,
start with Zaun, and then we can immediately do some of the major PvZ stuff.
Yeah, all right.
Do you want me to come to NA or you want to do it on Europe?
Oh, you
Actually, could you come to Europe? I have all of my replays there.
Yeah, that's easy. As long as Battle.net's not breaking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it has been a little bit buggy for Americans, from what I can recall.
Oh, yeah, I'm on the wrong account. All right, 1 second.
Channel ZombieGrub?
Sure, that works. Okay. Logging in.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's a... Yeah, I'm just thinking, what's the best way to do this? Have you ever done this before or no?
I have, yeah. I actually did a round with, let's see, Drogo and TLO back when he was pro. This was a couple of years ago. And then I was going to do one with Thermal, but the time never worked out. So Drogo, it was very easy to get Drogo just to talk. I was like, here's a Protoss versus Protoss, and he just gave me every information from here to the no universe, so...
Yeah, okay. I'll get it. Okay, I see you. Yeah, so I have some Zaun replays. I have Ragnarok versus Zaun best of 3. I watched these already, but I can't completely remember them. But it would just be okay, I think, to just go over them anyway.
Sure.
Zaun tends to... So I'll do a little bit about Zaun, and then I'll try to cover as much of the matchup of what I think and how I think other people think in general as well. Zaun specifically actually has a pretty weird style most of the time.
Right.
So he's very fond of playing double Stargate openers and then goes into Charge Lot, into double Robo Disruptor, that tends to be one of the main tendencies, and he really likes to finish games with double robo pushes with like 4-5 disruptor, which is kind of odd because it leaves him a little bit exposed in the early to mid game against queen all-ins. So if you're thinking, okay, let's just scroll through the start. So the main start obviously is going to be double scout block, or double probe downstairs, and then one goes to block every single game. Either that or it's gas first, no scout. These are the only two serious options for openers in PvZ. There's one more option, which MaxPack sometimes plays, which is playing the 17 Nexus. You still block your opponent's natural, and you chrono boost out a Zealot early on. But this is MaxPack specific, and he has an all-Terran group, so it's completely useless. But
Okay.
you have it anyway in case it happens.
Cool.
He used to almost always go into Tempest with that as well, from what I recall. So a lot of Zergs, if they want to go for Queen All-In, take forward bases. I can't ping whatsoever, which is pissing me off. I'm gonna fix that for the next one. I think it has to do with the overlay. But if they take forward bases, they tend to they don't tend to always Queen Walk, but the Queen Walk is stronger because it's closer by.
Right.
So line bases on almost all maps are worse for Queen Walks. 2000 Atmospheres, Oxide, Jagannatha. Best maps for Queen Walk are Lightshade and Jagannatha. Oh, Lightshade, they also take forward base. Lightshade, Jagannatha, best maps. 2000 Atmospheres is not great. Yeah, I think that's the main thing with Queen Walks.
Okay.
Queen Walks especially popular from foreigners. A lot of the Koreans don't like him as much. Well, the higher level Koreans like him. The better the Zerg player, the more they tend to Queen Walk, honestly. Not sure if there's a correlation, but it seems like it is. Okay. If you have any questions, please just stop me. Or if you think I should explain something more, then also stop me and immediately go. Oh, this is something that a lot of the Koreans do as well. So Trap is really big on this. Is the warp gate into Stargate rather than Stargate before warp gate. I haven't been able to truly figure out why they do it yet, because all the other signs are so obvious that it's still Stargate that it's the worst fake in the world.
Okay.
So I genuinely do not understand it most of the time, because whenever Zaun, for example, plays an actual Twilight build, he'll always open Adept Stalker. But if he plays Stargate, he always goes Adept. So there's such big tells from his second unit already that faking the warp gate is completely irrelevant. It's not like Zerg is going to throw down a Roach Worm before the second unit is out. So, and the weird thing is that they almost always open with Void Ray first as well. So the only thing that they could force out is a fast Roach Warren, which, I don't know. You're not even tricking them in, like, hoping to get some extra damage with your Oracle, which in my opinion is one of the main things that you might be able to do. Hope that they delay Spores, but even that is not really viable. He does fake the second gateway timing, which is so interesting. Like, he's still trying to fake it, but then the second unit is such a dead giveaway that makes zero sense. But yeah, maybe he'll change that up. Yeah, and then goes Void Ray first. Trap does the exact same thing. The one thing that this does do, by the way, is that it makes potential glaive all-ins or glaive timing, so 2-gate, 3-gate, and 4-gate timing, specifically with a third base, makes them hit a little bit harder with more units because your first warp in is faster. So usually because you go Stargate before Warp Gate, your Warp Gate is delayed by like 10, 12 seconds, which means your first two Adepts are delayed. So you can just hit like 12 seconds faster with 2 more units. That is another thing which could be considered a decently sized deal. So if you're playing the absolute tightest Glaive Adept timings, where you cut a little bit of eco after Stargate, getting Warp Gate before Stargate makes sense. Otherwise, the way that they do it, it doesn't seem to do a whole lot. But from my experience, of course, most of the time when good players do something, there's a reason, but I can't see it.
All right, sure. Okay, that is interesting.
If there's any questions, please ask. Or if this is not at all how you want it to be done, also tell me so I can change it, because you're more experienced in this.
No, it's perfect. A lot of the things are... It's hard it can be hard to kind of follow all the branches, but this is especially why I like that it's going to be recorded. Okay. I can always go back and write it down in a way that's outlined for me in a branch. So it's all good. You can just keep on talking about anything and everything, because all of it's all of it's relevant and all of it is interesting. I mean, I know some of the stuff obviously, but yeah, like you're talking like 90% under the surface stuff that I'm not going to be aware of. So perfect stuff.
4 gas before third base is uncommon. 2 reasons for that. Either he wants to get Fleet Beacon second Stargate, or he didn't think that he could take the third base. So he might have seen the extra links being built somehow. And then delaying gases makes no sense because you're just going to oversaturate your natural. So it's like, well, might as well put my probes to use. So that's one of the 2 options. But it's relatively uncommon and quite bad because it delays your third base a lot. It makes sense in this case though. Okay, it's gonna be Fleet Beacon actually. Nice. Look at those calls. You love to see it. Fleet Beacon, second star. This is pretty uncommon build, I'd say. The fast Fleet Beacon actually completely died. Mass Queen and Spores in correct locations tends to defend it well. So, yeah, there's no real use playing it anymore, I think. I'd be very surprised if we see any of that in season finals. If we're gonna see it from anyone, maybe Haas against Serral could do it. Okay. Maybe Probe can play it, but I don't know. I just don't think the build is very viable at high level anymore.
Right.
Because it's just also so obvious what's happening. The opening Stargate and then your third base is super delayed. The only other thing it can be is like a weird Archon drop, but all Archon drops are terrible. It can also just be defended by Queens. So, yeah, there really is nothing there, I think.
Okay.
Okay, we can just move forward a little bit. So there's the main Queen all-in, at least for foreigners right now, I think is the 4 gas Queen all-in, which hits pretty freaking hard. Gets a bunch of Queens, 4 gases, like 47, 48 drones. Start moving with the ladies, like 5-ish, I think. So yeah, it hits hard, and that's the main one that you pay attention for usually. A good tell for most Queen all-ins if they start taking gases before they have major mineral saturation. So obviously the main resource to create more wealth is always going to be minerals. So the earlier Zergs cut minerals, the more indicative of aggression it is. There is a little bit of a caveat there in that Zerg from Korea sometimes just randomly seem to take gases, less systematic. I'm thinking Rogue, Dark. They seem to just do things sometimes, and they're a lot trickier than some of their foreign counterparts, where I'm not sure if it's intentionally faking with gases, but they do some weird stuff, and it can be very tricky to read. Economically a little bit worse at times. Continue. Honestly, I think this build just kind of sucks. There's a couple of variations from here. So most of the time, from what I recall, is that if you're playing against Hydras, you're going to continue carrier production. If you're playing against Corruptors, you want to swap into Void Rays, add a 3rd Stargate, get Flux Veins, carrier to fine against Hydra. So here he should be... I think you almost always get 4 carriers anyway, and then after that you should know your opponent's tech, and you can decide whether you're getting Void Rays or carriers. You usually blindly go 2 Void Rays, and you can cancel those into more carriers once you see Hydras, because Corruptors are more dangerous, basically.
Right.
Like you have less time to truly respond to it. So yeah, you blindly go 2 Void Rays, and then usually when you see Hydras, you go into carriers. He's not doing that, but he hasn't seen the Hydras yet either.
So, I mean, this looks like a build that's been done in the past. I remember like Need did it versus Scarlet like sometime last year. Is this an advanced build? Do you consider it a bit of a cheese? Like, what is its goal?
Sucks. I don't know what the goal is. I think the build genuinely sucks. I think a lot of build sucks that still get played though. Okay. I don't know. I don't understand why this build is that good. So there's the reason why I think this build isn't that good is because there's always options that a Protoss has from certain things. So like here, he took his 3rd and 4th gas before the 3rd base. That's a necessity with this build. There's almost no other build in the Protoss arsenal that requires a 3rd and a 4th gas to be taken. Which means whenever you're not playing this build and you're taking a 3rd and 4th gas, you're making a different build suboptimal to fake, basically. You get what I'm saying?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is why ideally as a Protoss, you have 3 builds that look exactly the same and have the same exact tells. And then Zerg needs to gamble, which is why it's so nice to take the fast third base. You can play 4-gate Glaive, you can play, I don't know, like a single Void Ray into Oracle, and then like maybe a delayed Fleet Beacon or something like that. Or you can be playing your standard triple Oracle crap, or like Void Ray into 2 Oracle and just force Twilight, Void Ray into Oracle, into Robo, into Quick Disruptors. Like you have a lot of variations there that all look exactly the same. The moment they look the same, you can kind of play off of them, which is really nice. And this type of build is good at the start because there's no optimal response yet. And once there's an optimal response and there's no alternative within that branch that you're taking, so the 4 gas before natural, or the 4 gas before third base, the build has been figured out. And then the only way it can win is if the Zerg has a suboptimal response. So you're hoping your opponent is an idiot, which is an okay way to play if you know your opponent doesn't know the response. Like, look, I've been immortaling people for 6 years straight in Heart of the Swarm if I knew they didn't know how to hold it. And that's completely fine. But the build had been figured out by others already, so you couldn't do it against them. So if you see this build, it either is because there is a perceived weakness, or it is because that player is so insanely tricky and doesn't mind doing slightly suboptimal builds to kind of cover for himself. But you can't just do this build, only do this build when you're playing 4 gas. And whenever you're playing 4 gas, it's always this build. That shouldn't be able to work.
Okay, all right.
I feel like we're going very deep on a very suboptimal build that you won't see, most likely. But
That's
it's
okay,
also
though.
nice. Yeah.
I mean, the stuff about the branches and the third nexus before extra gases is still actually relevant. So it's still helpful. It is unfortunate because we might not see this build, but yeah.
Let's just go to the next game. I think the game is over. Not too much interesting.
Sure.
Like, there's no... I find them... Yeah. Okay. I kind of want to watch this. I can't remember it either, but this should be exciting as well. After that, we can also do some... Oh, wait. I can't watch this replay with you for whatever reason.
Is it like super old?
Clients ID cache write unable to open file.
Oh, that just sounds like a bug, actually. I'm gonna restart.
I can't watch it by myself either. Oh,
that's
exciting.
Oh man, I hope the patch or whatever they did didn't break everything.
Oh, we could watch the first game. It's on the same replay pack. Maybe it's just certain replays. No. Well, I have more replays.
Okay. Where'd you get these replays?
I cannot discuss that.
Okay.
I'm like a journalist. You can't review your sources.
Sure, all right.
Let me see. I don't think I have any dark replays. I have some. Do you just want to do some GSL? Like I said, I don't know what you want to do. Do you really care about watching the players that we're going to watch, or just watching anything basically that is in a matchup? We
can watch anything, anyone. But I might ask, like if we're watching Lambo versus you, then I might be like, well, does Cyril do the same thing or something like that, right? But I don't care if we watch people who aren't going to be participating in the season finals.
Okay. I'm just quickly going to my folders. 1 sec. Trap. No, I don't want this. Linux. Sound beyond Sound versus Linux?
Wow.
Or Sound versus Armani. Sound versus Armani we can do. We can do another PVC. That sounds, yeah, and it works. Okay. Plays the same build again, I'm actually gonna lose it. That should be fine. Oh, there's another build, by the way, that Sound really likes to do. And he's the one who did this first. So you know the old school 4-gate Glaive Adept?
Yeah.
So he actually made a little bit of a variation on it, where it used to be that your first warp in was with 2 adepts, because 2 gates would finish, and he changed it so that 3 gates would finish at an appropriate time, and he actually got 9 to 10 adepts at 428, 429 with glaives finished, which was a lot faster than any of the older times that we used to have.
Okay.
That's
and
actually
how did he do that?
by changing the gate timing a little bit. So the build is a little tighter. You need to pull out of gas as well. We might get to see it, but I doubt it. This is not really a good map for it. Yeah, it's gonna get started. See, once again, he does the same thing. See this? It's so interesting to me. Trap does the same crap as well. They always play adept, and still go straight into Void Ray with Warp Gate before Stargate. I really do not understand it. I really like it, and I don't get it. It's fantastic.
Nothing benefits from the faster warp gate timing.
Yeah, like I said, the earlier glaive timings, slightly tighter glaive timings, but they tend to not do a lot of glaive timings anymore after Stargate. At least not Zaun and Trap don't do it much. Okay, oh, as I say it, here comes the Twilight. Look at this. Okay, so technically there is some reads here to be made for Zerg. So now you see that the gateways, basically, the moment they finish, the warp gate is done as well. So that first 2 adapt should be able to be warped in now. But in order to do that properly, you also actually need to cut workers. And his pylon isn't done. So right now, there's no perceivable advantage. You see that? He can't even warp in the 2 adapts.
Yeah. It's gonna be supply blocked.
Yeah, and he has no money. So how does this make sense? I don't understand that.
Dimensional strings.
So then it doesn't make any sense. He could be going into 4 gate. Then you still wanted 2 warp in at some point. So this is one of the, I think one of the main branches from the standard is the 4 gate glaive. A lot of the Koreans are very fond of it. You almost always transition into Blink Disruptor behind this. Going into charge is extremely risky because you just don't have any real defense. You tend to just die against counterattacks. You need either fast disruptors or some force fields or something else. You can sometimes scout it by seeing the lack of extra gases because you're really low on money most of the time, which sucks. So if somehow the Zerg gets a look on the gas, it's not possible on this map, but on Jakanata sometimes you can do that. Then you'll see a fake third gas being taken by Protoss very often on a map like that.
Okay.
There's a couple of ways you can defend as the Zerg, and so Cyril, for example, the way he always likes to defend is he kind of gives up his third base, like not actually give it up, but gives up on mining for a bit, and then walls his natural with like a third evo, or sorry, a second evo. And it wouldn't surprise me if Armani does something similar. Armani is kind of keen on the foreign Zergs early game. He tends to play a little bit similar to them sometimes. And sometimes also not at all.
Glory to the Daylong.
So yeah, this timing is not bad. Like 545 if you hit there with like 12 adepts or so. I think 10 adepts is very little. I don't think this is very good. But yeah, there goes. See, this is how Cyril probably would do it as well, and then he'd defend with the queens forward and have the links maybe in on the other side, and sometimes he pulls the drones away. This is an absolutely fantastic defense. I'd be very happy with this.
Thank you.
I think it's bad to go after the Oracle, but yeah, this is a really nice start for what's it called, Armani. I think I'd be very happy with this. This follow-up looks like something that SOS would do, and Zaun, I guess, also likes it. The double X added Stargate. Then you get +1. I think you go just into Mass Void Ray. And then you play from there. He's generally a big fan of the Void Ray stuff. So, and he used to like Disruptors a lot, and I think he still does. He's also pretty good with it. Any questions?
No, nothing specific.
Nice. So as TOS right now, what you're trying to do is you're figuring out what tech there is or what units are gonna pop, and then hopefully, yeah, be able to respond properly. mainly you're trying to see if it's like gonna be Mutas or something like that.
Right.
That's
right.
that's really the only surprise that can really catch you at this point, and it is pretty important. I guess another thing is that at this point Armani doesn't know that it is double Stargate added, so it could still be Swarm Host as well, and you do want to be aware of it, even though it's a terrible play against Void Ray. It's still nice to know that Swarm Hosts are coming because you can position your units differently. But honestly, if it's like Roach Hydra or Hydra Bane, it doesn't really matter too much, as your responses are going to be very similar.
Okay. I mean, do you think we're just gonna see like? I mean, or we're gonna just see like McQueen pools? Is that still the go-to for most Zerg, or are we actually gonna get a decent amount of like these games? We actually have Hydras on the way and a Hive on the
This
way.
is impossible to say. I think, like I said, I think the foreigners like the queen pools more, but Dark also is a fan of throwing in a queen pool every now and again. If we're gonna see any late games, I'm expecting it to be very different from this style. I'm expecting it to be with Link styles into Ultra. Like you said.
Really?
It might actually be be better to watch like a nice Dark late game somewhere, you know?
Sure,
the way that
yeah.
we've been playing them. These games make no sense to me. I'm not a huge fan of this playstyle. It seems... Yeah, I don't know. I'm... Not great. Because the Glaive Adapt timing, I do kind of like. But the thing with Glaive Adapt is that you're kind of either creating an advantage or, well, not really. And then with the Stargates, it kind of stabilizes the game, you know? It's very difficult to kill people with just Void Rays. So it feels like they don't really synergize well together. Like you're going for a high-paced game with Glaive Adapt, and then all of a sudden you want to slow down the game so much. So if you did a lot of damage, you're giving the Zerg a lot of time to come back, spread creep, build queens, get a lot of drones, and basically play an even late game. And if you were behind, you're never going to be able to take a forward base. So I'm not a big fan of it, but you do see it, especially if the Protoss believe that they're a lot better than their opponent.
Okay.
Whereas like it's kind of like a safe way to try to win, and Zaun does like that. He's a relatively safe player in like that. I'm not sure if his builds necessarily are always safe, but what he believes to be safe, he likes to play.
So then,
What
about the late game, are we gonna see? You said Lings and Ultras, which does seem to be popular go-to. But then,
Infestor Queen, Ling Ultra. Yeah.
okay, yeah. And then, what about the microbial shroud stuff? Is that actually gonna catch on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's being flexible.
Okay, so we're gonna see that for season finals, you think? I mean,
Yeah,
I haven't really seen it much from the foreign Zergs yet. Still seems to be a bit of a dark special.
No, I think some foreign Zergs will play it.
Okay.
It would surprise me if they don't. Who are the
Okay.
foreign Zergs that are playing? Nah, maybe. Well, Scarlet doesn't have many. But there's really only Cyril that's gonna play some ZVPs, no?
Ooh.
Scarlet might play Probe.
Yeah. I don't know what she's gonna do in that one, but
Yeah.
maybe something a bit cheap, bit silly.
Yeah, I think Cyril might play some Ling Bang Ultra stuff. It's not completely unthinkable. But he's pretty diverse these days. So also can just all in. Like he knows his build. Especially if you're playing like Jagannatha or something, or Lightshade. Like I'm expecting him to Roach Queen, honestly.
Yeah, I really
It surprises
forgot
me if he doesn't.
how few Zergs we have in the season finals. It's only 3.
Yeah,
Jesus.
it's wild. Yeah. Yeah, really only. Oh, Dark also. I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah. Dark, Scarlet, and Cyril. That's it. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's because it's really underpowered.
Yeah, that's the reason. Hard, difficult tools. Yeah, well, I think this game is pretty over. I think he's just gonna aim over across the map and win the game. Do you
Right.
want to watch a GSL game? Or do you want to watch a different matchup?
We
Or
can
do
watch a
you
different
wanna-
matchup. PvP, PvT, either one. Always could use more details there. Some questions though in general about PvZ. Like, what do you find? Obviously, like I'm not gonna be able to memorize a lot of like the finer details in a week, but what do you find that casters tend to focus too little on or too much on when they really should be focusing on X or Y? Do you have any opinions about that? Like in PvZ, are we too focused? Do we exaggerate how much the queen walk happens? Do we should we be paying a lot of attention to those I guess gas timings, or do you think that it's
I think if you wanna, it depends a bit what you wanna do. But if you wanna predict accurately,
sure?
it's important to. I think one of the things that is the most important when casting is to accurately represent the mindset of the player with this information. So even if to me it doesn't make sense, I still should be able to understand why that person thinks that way. Or
Right.
which is why so when I was talking about that Twilight build earlier, like I don't understand that at all, which is very frustrating because I can't explain that either. Like I don't understand why they get the Warp Gate before Stargate every game if they don't use it when they go for a Twilight build like we saw in this last game. Ideally, I'd always be able to explain this, even if I think it's a bad play. I think that's the most important thing. It's and in order to do that, I think you need to be aware of when a Toss scouts something, what he sees, and what the Zerg wants to show. Like that type of stuff, I think is important. It's always I think sometimes it's the problem is this is insanely difficult. That if you're not paying proper attention, and this is in general, like when I talk with Lambo, for example, and we're talking about the same game, I'll be like, that game was pretty one-sided. And he'll be like, yeah, but it's because of X and Y. And then I rewatch, I'm like, oh crap, like I completely missed it. Like it's really easy, I notice, when I'm like talking to someone to just kind of gloss over things that are really important and that get missed, and then the game looks silly.
True.
I don't know. This was absolutely completely useless advice.
Yeah,
But
I mean, you brought up a dangerous point. It's as a commentator, just striking the balance between like enjoying the game and entertaining the audience and actually going into every single detail. That's constantly a line that I guess we have to walk. But I mean, that's where I wish we had like that, the analysis segment that a lot of other esports do, because you could come in and be like, what was glossed over was this and this, but there's no reversing time if we already missed it. And there's been plenty of times where I was like, I didn't even catch that it was a 14 pylon or not. Is this going to be a proxy Stargate? But yeah, that doesn't. I think it's hard to focus on that like at all times. So
yeah, I think it's so one of the things is that I think it really is important to realize what players have seen. I think this is something that is not just on the casters, but also on the observers sometimes.
Okay.
Is that... this sounds like I'm protecting players, but sometimes players look really dumb, but it's just because they barely miss something. And I think it's important to point out where the losses or where the wins come from.
Right.
And how it came that something is happening. Like, if Zerg is queen walking, like something that Elaser really like to do is to build like 12 or 14 links extra and be really active with his links in the mid game when he would be queen walking. So he'd take away more distraction from the Protoss, from scouting. Like that type of stuff is like, I don't know, I think it's cool to mention that. And then also to kind of see where the energy of the Oracle went. Like, did he have to activate it once or twice? Like, these are the details where games really get decided often in PvZ, which feel like small things. I think that is something that is, for me, is important.
All right, yeah.
But I mean, that's different for everyone. So I don't feel like I'm very qualified to give advice on that or to tell you that I feel like this. Like generally I just enjoy it most of the time. I think most casting is pretty good.
Oh well, yeah, that's good. That's good. But I mean, I like to get the opinions, of course. Like, it's not. I don't know what the balancing act is for every person ever watching StarCraft. No one does. But if Harstem's like, yeah, I kind of wish that they'd point out, the pulsar beam was used, they couldn't do something else later with energy, then I want to take that in consideration, as opposed to just glossing over it. But no promises on whether I actually catch something or can mention it. But finer details can never be, I guess, never be ignored. There you go.
Yeah. All right. What else do you want to watch?
We can check out some PV. I mean, we're gonna have a lot of PvP, so check some PvP out.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want to do replays or some GSL?
Were there any? I mean, we can do GSL. What were the PvPs there?
Do you have PvP today? Trap versus Zest.
Oh, okay. Sure.
How do you want to do that? Do you just want to match up, or you want me to share screen? Or do you want to share screen?
I mean, there's a website called Watch Together that we could use.
Oh, okay, sure. Let's do that.
Which match was Trap versus preliminary winners final?
Winners final. Two Protosses. Of course, it's the winners final.
Winners match, it is. Okay. Oh. There we go. There we go. Should work.
Okay. Got it. Do you want me to click?
Sure, go ahead and click.
Nice. It keeps pausing.
Let me try and click, I guess. Oh, I think we got it to work.
Okay. Do you want to move forward? I think the first few minutes are always bad. Oh.
He does kill the probe.
Okay, here we go. Are you seeing it happen?
It's hard for me to
This works?
I am. Yeah.
when I see the
Okay, nice.
thing on our toes is
So, first of all, two things in PvP, obviously. You can either one gate or you can two gate expand. On Oxide and Blackburn, you're always going to see one gate in high level games. There's not that many variation there. In Korean PvP, almost no one one gate expands. In Europe, Maxpax one gate expands, and that's it. And then you have Maxpel, and Maxpax is Disciples who also expand, but no one else. But it might be interesting. Maxpax is very good at one gate expanding. Like you need to have insane knowledge of every single all-in, and even then you still die very often. Most of the time when Maxpax loses just because he dies to something stupid. But he's very good at having, like, knowing lots, basically. It's important. There's a couple of build orders that are popular. Sentry Stalker has been making a little bit of a comeback as an opener. Fast Scout, Sentry Stalker into Stargate will be played if you scout Adept when you open Sentry Stalker most of the time. Because with Sentry Stalker, you can't really take any map control. And against an 8 Adept opener, you need to kind of start shooting Adepts as fast as possible with Stalkers. So instead of doing that, you just go for a quick Stargate. And with the Hallucination Scout, you can see whether your opponent is playing Stargate or not. And you kind of have an okay situation most of the time. Stalker into Sentry is still very popular. And Adept openers are probably also very good. Like 2 Adept into double Sentry, 4 or 8 Adept openers. All of those are very, very good and quite popular.
Okay, all right.
So yeah.
So in general, I mean, the stereotype is that the Koreans are more aggressive and the foreigners less so. Do you find there's any particular reason for that? Or do you find it to be true?
Yeah, it's probably true. Yeah, I don't know if there's any reason for that. I don't think it's necessarily true in the openers, though. I think foreigners play kind of wild as well. So I think the opener is, I don't want to say largely figured out, but it opens pretty similar across regions. So right now, Zest went for Adept, Sentry. This means that your Hallucination Scout is a little bit later than is with Sentry Stalker. And you force your opponent to rewall a couple of times with your first 2 Adepts. This is probably the greediest build that there is. You get a very fast Nexus, you get map control with your Adepts, and you get Scouting. It is pretty bad against things like a 3rd Gate Proxy or like a 6 or 8 Stalker opener, because you just don't have any real DPS in your army.
Makes sense.
Follow-up most of the time is going to be Twilight, first tech structure, almost always. With heavy Sentry builds, always the case, or 90% of the time the case. Sometimes it's Robo, but it's almost always going to be Twilight into Blink. No one really plays anything but Blink these days.
Right.
Blink is too good against Stargate. Without Blink, dealing with prisms is hell. So you always just want blink basically, and it allows you for some aggressive, potential aggressive plays, which is nice.
Okay.
So even though nothing has happened here, Zest is up 4 workers because his opening is pretty greedy. With the what you call it, with the double adept into double sentry, and this type of opener that Trap is doing, 2 stalker into 6 adept, is not really an opening, and it's also not very good against this. This is like a bit of a trick trying to catch your opponent off guard. Zest wasn't off guard. Now he's just going to be up 4 or 5 workers. At that point, you're just going to have control of the game. It becomes very tricky for Trap to play it.
So what Trap did want to go up against?
I have no clue.
Okay, then.
No.
Someone
Well,
who's not
like-
paying attention.
Yeah, basically. Like you're hoping for a non-optimal response.
Okay.
Which is not a bad thing in PvP. PvP is the matchup where it's really difficult to scout, really difficult to get information, and there's so many different variations of openers that almost always there's going to be a non-optimal response. Adept builds are really, really good. I would have and also this was a trick. So usually when you play like high adept numbers, you open up with 2 adepts.
Right.
But here he tried to hide the fact that he had adepts altogether, and he actually managed to do that as well. So usually I'd say that's really good for Trap, but Zest response just was fine. Kind of blindly, like he didn't have any major info. Now Zest once again gets lucky by seeing this prism. Like basically Trap had like 2-3 tricks set up, and all of the tricks just got figured out in a row. With like a little bit of luck, also obviously consistent play out of Zest, but it's just, yeah, it just happens. Sometimes you're just gonna be behind. Let me pause. When you have the main setup, which is like with the, like you have any type of sentry opener, especially in sentry stalker mirror openers, and then I'm talking about either stalker into sentry or into sentry stalker into like more stalkers and some more sentries. You're almost always gonna be 2-gate expanding to a 3rd.
Okay.
That's ideal. There's no reason to get 3 and 4 unless you want to be aggressive and chrono boosted your Twilight. Then most of the time you want to delay your Forge, or you won't be able to carve out enough of a stalker advantage for it to really matter. So yeah, most of the time you're going to be seeing 2-gate stuff, 2-gate pressures, 2-gate, yeah, just anything. 2-gate 3rd base is the most common thing. There is some follow-ups, of course, with proxy dark shrines on the map or dark shrines at home, but they're generally easily spotted, especially because most people, if they want to do it quickly, they need to proxy their 4th pylon. So, okay, this is one of the things that can be a tell. So if you're a Protoss and you scout your opponent's base, let's say with a stalker, sentry, and you send your first hallucination across the map, your opponent needs to build a 4th pylon. If there's no 4th pylon in the main base and the Twilight started a bit too fast for your opinion, then you know that there's most likely a pylon proxy somewhere on the map.
Okay.
And that's when you'll see hallucination 2 and 3 go to the sides of the map very often. That's a nice thing. Like if you would be able to
Yeah.
catch something like that, that'd be really tight. Ooh, that's good.
Okay. So
That's nice.
fourth pylon. I mean, we all know the second pylon, I guess, at this point, but a 4th pylon also.
Yeah, in like a 2 base
represent
versus 2
something.
base situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Because the 4th pylon needs to finish before the Nexus on the natural finishes, because you're gonna get supply block 39 otherwise.
Right.
So it's like a big deal. Like it's a good tell. It's always it's like, ooh, that's nice. It also can mean like a proxy gate on the map somewhere. So if there's like Twilight Forge or like just Twilight and no 4th pylon, it's like oof, like something is happening, you know? Like this is not okay. And then you go figure out what it is by sending either units or hallucinations on the map. Just because it isn't on the map doesn't mean. So this is another cool thing. It's like when someone proxies a 5th pylon, they're cutting into like something else because they don't need that pylon. So they're gonna have oversupply, which is obviously inefficient, in order to hide it. So that is also cool to mention, I think. Like if you catch this type of stuff, like it's really nice because it shows an understanding, and I don't think most people know this. So it's like these are things that people think about. Like, okay, like I don't want to show the fact, that I have only 3 pylons in my main. Like there's a lot of small mind games that can be played with that, and they cause inefficiencies in the build. And so there's like a trade-off. There's always a trade-off, but it's important to know that.
Okay, that's very cool.
Yeah, I think so.
To
I like
cover.
it.
Go.
This game, I think, is over. Or well, like this is also one of the reasons why it's really bad to not have blink. If your opponent has blink and you don't have a good enough immortal count, you can just walk into your opponent's army, snipe a sentry, and then blink away. And you can repeat, like rinse and repeat that like 3 times, and your opponent doesn't have any sentries left. And it's also really easy to shade by like 2 adepts somewhere like this and force a big portion of the army back to deal with that. And then your main army is completely out of position. So this is why basically blink is king right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think will remain king forever with the way the game is going.
Right. So in this game, Trap tried 2 kind of tricks: the Adept, the Warp Prism. Because he went for the Warp Prism trick, he's kind of forced into playing this Charge Immortal stuff, and it's just worse than Blink.
Yeah, you just lack a lot of. So the nice thing about the charge, the prism stuff, is that sometimes you can get a really sick counter attack in. The Stalker is really powerful because it gets so much map control, and if the prism goes unspotted, like that's a huge move, you know. Then there's no Stalkers in position, and you can force the Stalkers back. The hardest part, very often, like this game is over because Seth just had a way better economical situation now. Not only from the early game, but also now like he's mining from a third and things like that. So it's like a really good spot for Zest. But even if the game was equal army-wise, it's difficult for Trap to move out. And you need a counter-attack, like a big counter-attack to be able to move out. Or you're just going to be base traded by the Stalker player, you know? If the Stalker player sees you move out down the ramp on Romanticide, he'll just blink over the minerals and start shooting your third base. And then by the time you hit his base, he already killed like 1.5 of yours. So you can either go full base trade or recall, and you don't have any reinforcements because you don't have cash. So that's another reason. But if you can force him back initially with like a prism drop, then all of a sudden your army is really powerful, because in a straight up fight, Immortals with +1, they freaking wreck Stalkers. Like they destroy them. So this is something to keep in mind. Very often, like the situation can look quite bad, but if you can force a fight, especially away from a battery, if you have Immortal Zealot, it can be okay sometimes.
Right. Okay.
But generally, the style sucks.
Okay. And this game is basically over unless something weird happens.
Yeah, but there's a lot of comeback mechanics. So especially Romanticide is kind of easy to defend.
Right.
So you can be pretty liberal with your tech. So you can throw down like double robo, disruptor, obviously good combat unit. You can maybe even get some DTs or whatever, or even just keep a prism on the other side. And when your opponent attacks, you counter attack with like 10 Zealot Warp in or something like that. I think this is generally the worst way to try and get back into a game, is by attacking into a battery.
I do have a specific question, actually.
Sure.
It's a bit interesting because, so I don't know if you remember this game, but there is, who was it for? Was it for you? I don't actually remember. Mana faced a Protoss, and I remember that at the time it was like rotting to Muslim casting, and they were pretty adamant that Mana, like he had basically gotten into like a lead on like Beckett or something like that, and he was trying to get into disruptors really quickly. Like he was in the lead, but he was trying to get to disruptors off of 3 bases. And he got killed like just at the right moment, right? The disruptor count wasn't high enough.
I remember that game.
You do.
Yeah, he got killed for a different reason, though.
Okay, yeah. So this is my question, right? Like they were like, I really feel like disruptors are unnecessary. Then Mana tweets, that something different is what killed him. Like he mistakenly thought X or Y or whatever it was.
Yeah, the game was completely. Was it against Skillas? No, he was in my group. Was it Protoss? Was it Christianer? Showtime.
Maybe that. Yeah, maybe Cristiano. I don't remember. But anyway, so do you remember the reason then? I mean, I actually don't remember Mana's tweet.
I'm just gonna go Mana's tweet so I remember the.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I can just. Yeah.
Can't believe I missed 4 force fields to 2 force field ramp. Lost 2-3 versus Drogo.
Oh, it was against Drogo. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game, Drogo never should have won. I think Disruptor was a fine call there.
Okay, actually. I mean, do you think there is generally a time in PvP where, is the transition too difficult sometimes to get into the disruptors, or do we overplay that a bit?
No, it's very difficult.
Okay. Just checking then.
Yeah.
So it's,
But it differs per map, of course.
okay.
Like on a map like Beckett, it tends to be a little bit more okay because defensively you're quite strong, and on Romanticide it can be okay, especially if you stay on 3 bases longer. It's a safe transition, but you just have less eco. So in my mind, I could consistently get into disruptors if I wanted to, but I'd always, uh, what was I gonna say? Because I always be behind an eco.
Okay.
So that's why I don't want to play it. Like I could always get to disruptor, but the other guy would just take a 4th base and probably a 5th base. And attacking with disruptors is very tricky. Like you need a high amount of disruptors and you need some bodies as well
Yeah.
in front of it. So yeah.
So
okay,
all right, yeah.
yeah, there's just once again there's like a big trade-off there in teams. Like you can get to them safely, but you can't take a 4th base. And that's very rare on most maps that you can take an easy 4th base. And Romanticide is one of them, I think, where it's possible if you take I guess you'd call it like a line base in the line of the 2, the 3, and the 4. Then that would be the kind of the line where you can often do something there, but otherwise, yeah, not so much. And often actually players do that as well on that map. They
Yeah.
like playing that.
I think it's something I've seen the trend as well. So
Yeah, but the Koreans tend to not really play disruptors. Honestly, it's more of a foreigner thing.
I mean, is that because the game ends a bit quicker over in Korea land, or is it just that they really prefer going for the multiple attack groups?
Trap likes them. Trap likes disruptors sometimes.
I was gonna say I feel like I see like a decent number of them if it actually gets to like a post 10-minute point, but I don't like PvP. It seems to end so much quicker in Korea.
Yeah, it's not common in Korea from what I recall. I watch a fair amount. Do you want to continue this game, or you want to watch the Drogo Mana, or you don't care about that?
Oh, I don't think we have to watch it. I just
Okay. Sure.
wanted your opinion on that transition. And we only got a couple minutes left. Does the game get interesting? Is there anything else you remember to point out?
No, not really. This game's pretty over.
Okay, yeah, and then he wins.
I'll just skip to see if I recall anything big from these games. Now, this was a really stupid game, so I don't think that's interesting at all. It's just really wild. So, and actually, there was some cool things here. So, no, because it's not gonna happen again. Okay, this is really cool though. This is nice. So this was the Blackburn game. You're gonna see a lot of Blackburn and Oxide, I think, because a lot of pros like to veto Lightshade Beckett, and then you're always gonna be left with a single 1-gate map at least, which is nice. So here there's a couple of options, and what Trap does here is not super uncommon, but it's also not that great. So he's gonna proxy his own Stargate, but I personally don't think it's very good.
Because
well, it's been figured out, the build. Like
Okay.
you need to trick your opponent somehow, some way.
right.
And if you don't manage to trick your opponent, and the trick is pretty obvious, because if you're delaying your opponent's nexus, they're always straight away gonna throw down a Stargate. Like there's no reason not to.
Right.
You're always gonna straight away throw down a Stargate. So the moment you don't see a Stargate, if you're not blocking the nexus, it's like okay. Or if you're blocking the nexus, then that's okay. And if you're not blocking the nexus and they don't build the nexus, it's like super obvious as well. Like
Yeah.
it's just this really only works if you're not thinking. Like, but which is not like there are moments where you're just kind of autopiloting, and you're not realizing what's happening because. But yeah, I mean, at this moment when Zest walks in, he sees no nexus, and he's gonna get the confirmation on the second pylon that there is no Stargate there. Like,
I mean, his
he
pylon.
100% should.
His probe's
Yeah,
still
like
in
he-
there, so
Oh, his probe was still there. Yeah, okay, yeah, I didn't even see that. But like at this point, his correct response probably would be he doesn't do it, but to full wall here with a forge immediately,
okay.
and to just start building like batteries, like his life depends on it, and go to like 24, 25 workers, and from there on out just win. Like you can't break a ramp. Once one cannon is up, it's just over. And super battery is extremely overpowered in general, but also in Void Ray versus Void Ray. So Yeah, it's just like the defender's advantage is freaking huge in that case. You're going to be outmining your opponent, and yeah, you should just kind of win the game most of the time, I think. This game actually gets pretty close, and the game also continues, which is really fun.
Oh, that's
But
cool. Yeah.
yeah, most of the time you're gonna see one gate versus one gate, and there's two options here. You can either go Phoenix, and then most of the time, if the other guy plays Phoenix as well, you're gonna be going into a Phoenix war, and you can go into like DT, like one Stargate into DT, or you can get like Mass Phoenix or whatever you want. You know, there's a lot of tricks there, and it's a little bit more random. Or what happens is that one of the players plays Oracle, and if one of the players plays Oracle, then the game changes a lot because the Oracle guy needs to go into Twilight behind that. Then you get Phoenix. It's really important to try to kill the Oracle or to know where the Oracle is. So let me talk about that for a bit. This is actually kind of interesting. So if the one player that is playing Oracle keeps his Oracle alive, the other person probably needs to build batteries in his main and natural. Otherwise, he can never move out with his Phoenixes.
Right.
So that costs quite a bit of money. And also in the early game, most of the time, he's not going to be able to do a lot with the Phoenixes, which means you have quite some freedom as the Oracle player, as long as your Oracle stays alive. The moment your Oracle dies, I think the Phoenix player basically just wins.
Okay, yeah.
You can go into like Phoenix Charge Lot, which is quite popular in that case. Or you can go into like Phoenix Robo, a little less popular. But Phoenix Charge Lot is really popular if you kill the Oracle especially. It's so freaking good. You just get complete control of the game. You have a lot of aggressive timings. Like they often go 4-gate before third Nexus even. Like this type of stuff, it's so annoying to play against. And also you don't have detection as the Oracle player, so you need to get a Robo most likely before third base in case the other guy gets DTs and stuff like that. And you can't get any scouting. The Phoenix player still has a lot of scouting. So
Yeah.
you're constantly flying in and out. You get a lot of damage from probes. That is like a scenario that happens often. Then you also have Oracle versus Oracle. And then sometimes one of the players gets a single Phoenix to chase the Oracle away. But yeah, and then you just kind of go into a more standard game. Very often, by the way, when you have 1-gate versus 1-gate openers, both players will go into 4-gate before third base. Why is
Okay.
that? I hear you ask. I actually do not quite know. It just feels like you die otherwise. It just somehow the gates and the money lines up in a way that there's like a big boost of units just as you're taking your third, and you just kind of die. It just kind of works like that. I don't know if there's like some maths behind it, but that's what it feels like. Just it sucks.
Interesting.
Also, the dark shrines are kind of common in this scenario because neither player will have a lot of sentries, so scouting is a lot harder. So
Right.
getting a perfect response to whatever is happening. Maybe that's the reason why the 4-gate is also good. Is because usually in PvP you always open up with big sentry counts, like 2-3 sentries. But in this case, both open Stargate, and you don't have any gas for sentries. You might get one sentry, but it's not constant scouting. So yeah, it's not the same at all.
Okay. All right.
This was something interesting, by the way. Here, I thought this was very funny. So this is something that happens a lot as well. Let me see if it was actually this moment or already happened earlier. So very often when you have this type of engagement, the wrong battery is healing.
The wrong
So-
battery.
Yeah. So if you overcharge a battery, that battery doesn't take priority over other batteries. So if there's already a battery healing the void ray, and you use overcharge on a battery, it happens. I think it either happened already or it's still gonna happen. I think it already happened earlier. Actually, wait. Let me see if I can find this moment. I was watching this, thought it was hilarious. Okay, here it happens. I think maybe. It doesn't matter too much, but you get what I'm
I
saying.
get the concept. Yeah, that's actually
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because against double void ray, here it happens. You see it?
yeah, I do. Yes.
Yeah, with double void ray, you should not be
Wow.
capable of taking any damage against double prismatic alignment if you have super battery.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something to pay attention to. That's another detail that's really cool if you manage to call it out. It's a big
Yeah.
one.
Oh, that is really cool.
Yeah.
I think we'll see a decent amount of shield battery defense in these PvPs. So I'll actually try to be paying attention to it because you're gonna have at least like 3 or 4. Last question here before I let you go because it is almost an hour. In your opinion, like we have Hero Marine in an all Protoss group. Do you have a strong opinion on how he's going to perform or his TVP, I guess, in general.
I think Steve P is very good.
Right,
I'm not
yeah.
that good in PvT though, so I'm a little bit biased. I just lose a lot to him, so it's
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah.
facing Neeb, SOS, and Parting.
He'll beat Neep. He'll have a good time again. I think he'll have a good time against SOS, and against Parting he'll have a very difficult time. I find Gabe very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, in general, usually I would look at that and be like, well, he usually dominates every Protoss in the Open Cup. But I know he's actually been a little, outspoken about the ping problem. And I don't know, Korean Protosses, do you think they have a particularly different style in PvT
Yeah.
that could trip them
Yeah.
up?
They're a lot better with the first units.
With the
They're
first
a lot better
units?
with Blink Stalker. Yeah.
Okay.
Their Adept and Stalker control is way superior to all their European counterparts.
Interesting.
And same, they're better with Blink as well.
Okay.
Way better with Blink. Their movement is way more intuitive. They're less worried. Their reads tend to be better as well. Their game sense is better. They need way less map information than most Europeans.
All right. I'm going to quote you
to-
then. I don't think I
to
could
make
say that.
correct calls. Please don't quote me. Europeans will fight me. No, it's no, but I think like there are some Europeans that do very well as well. But I think the unit movement and the unit control of mainly gateway units is superior, and a lot of the games get decided in the early game. I think one of the things that's important when you're thinking of PvT is to understand how the builds interact with each other and how they tend to interact with each other. So understand what the different openers are for Terran. Like there's not that many, but it's important to understand the difference between like Marine Factory Reactor or Marine Reactor Factory, to have like the whether it's a 3 racks or whether it's a 2 racks, and like how the like where the cuts are being made and where the risks are being taken. Like I think these things, because it's not a coin flippy map, but there's always gambles that are made in PvT, and the early game decisions have a very big impact on the rest of it. And I think it's kind of important to understand how these work, where you'll see that certain builds just fare way better against others, but in certain situations, all of a sudden they don't, and that's because like a vision disadvantage or because a unit is being used in a very particular way. And I think there's a lot of information there that does sometimes get lost, where there's a lot of things you can do with the units in the early game in TVP for both sides. And I think that's the most important thing to pay attention to. Is just what are the units doing? Like how do these build orders tend to match up? So if you have like a Stargate against a Hellion drop, it's like that tends to be good for a Stargate player.
Right.
But if something maybe happens, or the Phoenix are out of position, or there's like a trick that the Hellion player pulls, then it might be different. So
Right.
yeah. I think PvT is like the trickiest early game to really make any sense of in general. Like it's very difficult to play as well for both sides. I think there's like so much diversity and there's so much things to confuse you, and very small mistakes can have huge consequences that get leveraged into a mid game that is super advantageous for one side.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll probably go over a decent amount of TVP with Euthermal. I've got them booked for another day here, so
Okay. Yeah.
that'll
I
be
hope
something
so.
I focus on.
Yeah. I think that's important.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, Harstem. This was very insightful. I'm gonna have to go back in the VOD and jot down some things and make like branch graphics. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This is very helpful.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun. All right. Thanks, and see you. Good luck.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ooh, guys, make sure to go and support Harstem. I'm sure many of you already do, but he did that pro bono as well, which is very nice of him. So, if you've got a sub, please send it his way. Certainly subscribe to his YouTube because that's absolutely free. And he's a lot of the stuff that he was talking to me today is often found in his YouTube videos. It's just a matter of parsing through them a little bit. So it's very kind of him to give that content to me for an hour. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. It certainly put me in a better mood than my ladder session was going. But we'll do a little bit more ladder. We've been, uplifted a little bit. I feel like we know a little bit more about StarCraft. Now we're gonna go pretend that we know what we're doing. Not really, because he was talking about all legitimate things, and I'm about to cheese a bunch of low masters. It's a little different, but still.